2021 fantasy season is over, so let's take a quick little review of the running back position. Who was the biggest bust? Who was the biggest breakout? And what does that mean for 2022? Are we drafting them differently? We'll start with breakouts at the running back position. Our first breakout shouldn't be a surprise to really anyone.
That's right.
It's Jonathan Taylor. His ADP, which is average draft position, so where he was drafted, was the running back 10 overall last year. And he finished, obviously, the running back 1. There was not a better fantasy asset outside of Cooper Kupp than Jonathan Taylor this year. This is a definition of a breakout. I mean, led the league in rushing, finished as the RB1, and looked like the best running back in the league.
Yeah, he definitely was the best running back in the league. He did everything right. The offensive line was absolutely incredible. Look, as a Jonathan Taylor doubter early in the season last year, I mean,
eat your words,
disappointed.
kid.
I'm sorry. It's clear that he's going to be the 101 this year.
Yeah, I do think he'll be the 101. Let's look at his stats from 2020 to 2021 because we see some incredible jump in production. He had over 100. He had 100 more rushing attempts from last year to this year. He had just over 600 more yards. He had 5.5 yards per attempt this year. 40 receptions. I honestly expected there to be more receptions. I mean, he had 36 last year.
Yeah.
Wasn't fully the guy the entire year. 40 this year. I expected that to be higher. Maybe we see that grow next year, but he had 8 more touchdowns from last year. Incredible season last year. 12 total touchdowns, 20 in 2021. I mean, this was legendary type performances from Jonathan Taylor. Even in games when it felt like, oh, maybe I think he's about to bust. No, he just pops off a 75-yard touchdown.
And then he goes off. It was crazy. And he's extremely talented. I think everything, that we saw this past year is why a lot of people were stocking up in the draft that he was in. Was it 2020 draft? They were trying to
I will never forgive the Chiefs for taking Clyde Edwards-Helaire over Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, everyone in the fantasy community was raving.
Let's talk about 2022, okay? Like, the big questions around Jonathan Taylor. Who's going to be the quarterback? Because we have no idea if Carson Wentz is going to be back. Does that matter to you, or is he locked and loaded as the 1.01 in drafts next year?
No, I don't think it matters who the quarterback is. I think if this offensive line comes back as a whole, and then anyone can really take the reins on the quarterback, Jonathan Taylor will be the 101. I mean, I took him in a mock draft that we did with our Dynasty community last week. If you want to check that out, look, I took him at the 101. I think he has tremendous value. I think he's going to return that. I took him over the quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, all those guys. I think he's going to be the 101 for the next couple years because we've been seeing that decrease of CMC. So, I mean, his talent is unmatchable right now.
Yeah, I would personally in Dynasty League still take those top 3 quarterbacks first. I'm a quarterback over running back in Dynasty type guy, but I definitely agree in redraft. Our next breakout of the year, who is it?
Leonard Fournette, ADP last year was running back 32. And look, he was drafted around a lot of different guys, okay? Melvin Gordon, Ronald Jones, A.J. Dillon, Michael Carter. Like his average draft position in rounds he was supposed to be taken in the late 6th round. He finished as RB 6 last year. The workhorse definition was Leonard Fournette. I thought it was going to be Ronald Jones. I mean, at worst, it was going to be 50-50, I guess, for these guys. But it was clear that Lenny was the guy last year.
Playoff Lenny lived into 2021, and he was a workhorse in that Tampa offense. He had a drastic bump in his numbers this year. 180 rushing attempts, 812 rushing yards, 69 receptions on 84 targets. That is 3rd best amongst running backs this year. 454 receiving yards and 10 total touchdowns. So we look at 2022 drafts. I mean, you said it. He was drafted in the 6th round. What does this look like next year? I mean, what are the questions that we're asking before we solidify him as like a 2nd round pick?
There are so many questions, coming into next year. Where is he going to go? Is he going to be a late 3rd round guy, early 4th round? I still can't take him 2nd.
Yeah.
Maybe even early 3rd. I still can't take him. I think Lenny's still going to go in maybe early 4th. I think that feels comfortable for me. But yeah, the questions are, is TB12 going to come back? Is he going to re-sign to Tampa again? What's going to happen? Like, are they going to re-sign Chris Godwin and all those weapons? They spent a lot of money to get this team back. Are they going to have the cap space to bring Lenny and everyone back? There's so many factors that play in and how Lenny's going to perform and will perform if he does return coming into the 2022 season.
I'll say this. If everything remains the same, everything stays intact, I do think he's a 3rd-round pick, maybe a mid to late 3rd-round pick. I could see that. I mean, I think if they bring him back, I don't imagine Ronald Jones is back. I mean, we would hope there's some clarity there. All right. Our next breakout of the year is James Conner at the running back position, drafted in the 8th round as the 35th running back off the board, next to guys like Ronald Jones, Zach Moss, Sony Michel, finished as the RB5 in PPR formats.
Crazy.
Look, his year was defined by 2 parts, in my opinion. Number 1, pre-Chase Edmonds injury. And he was really just a guy who was super inefficient but got touchdowns. It was so frustrating if you faced him because he would have like 30 yards, 3 touchdowns, And then the second part of his year was the post-Chase Edmonds injury, and he was a do-it-all back.
Yeah.
He, in that time period when Edmonds was absent, he was 3rd in targets amongst running backs. I mean, he was doing everything. I don't know what this means for next year. Will they re-sign him? Both Edmonds and Conner are free agents, but he had a great year. He had 18 total touchdowns this year. I think that was 3rd in the league.
Yeah, it was 3rd in the league. He did great. It's just crazy and no one expected James Conner or Leonard Fournette to kind of really take off to where they did this past year.
Everyone labeled these guys done, to be honest. They were done. They were supposed to be done.
Yeah, they were supposed to be done. Look, will he resign next year to Arizona? We don't know. Can he stay healthy? I mean, our biggest question coming into last year was, can he stay healthy? Was he going to be the guy? Can he play all 18, 17 games? Which he did miss, I think, 1 game, if I'm not mistaken. But we just don't know, once again, the outcome. I think if he does re-sign, let's say, to a 2-year contract, maybe 4th round, if you want to take the chance. But that also depends on Chase Edmonds. Is Chase Edmonds going to come back?
And that's something I wanted to talk about as well with the health concerns. I almost wondered throughout the year, well, he was splitting the backfield with Edmonds most of the year. Was that the reason he was able to stay healthy? Because he wasn't the workhorse.
Yeah, exactly.
That is something that GMs in Arizona, the GM in Arizona, is going to have to think about. Like, is this someone we can rely on and give big money? So it'll be interesting. If he comes back and Edmonds is gone, you're saying what round you would draft him?
I think I would take the chance in the 4th.
Okay. I like that. I'm okay with 4th round.
It has to be 4th
Who's
round.
our last breakout of the year at the running back position, Badaki?
Elijah Mitchell. He's currently still running the ball for the San Francisco 49ers in the playoffs currently, and his ADP, undrafted. No one took him. No one expected him to be the guy to come into this year. It was all about Trey Sermon. It was Trey Sermon this, maybe Raheem Mostert if he was going to stay healthy.
Rest in peace, Trey Sermon.
Honestly, and then he finishes as RB26. Look, you saw him pick up in the second half of the season. Not even second half. He did get work early, but we was like, oh, Raheem was hurt. He was going to come back, and then he misses the rest of the season. Then we all thought it was going to be Trey, but not.
And then people thought maybe Jeff Wilson was going to get involved. And he missed quite a few games, if I'm not mistaken. He missed 6 games, still finished as the RB26. If we look at his stats, just under 1,000 rushing yards, 6 total touchdowns, but what was confusing for you and I was the lack of involvement in the passing game.
Yeah.
Only 19 receptions, but he had 20 targets, so he was quite efficient. And it's not as if he didn't show that he could do that in college. What do we think about Elijah next year and going forward? Because this offense could look different if there's a new quarterback there. Trey Lance probably.
Absolutely. Look, for me, I'm actually more confident taking Elijah Mitchell in a redraft, obviously, and a dynasty standpoint over James Conner and Leonard Fournette earlier. I think Elijah Mitchell, late 3rd, early 4th. If Elijah Mitchell, James Conner, and Leonard Fournette are on the board, I think I'm going to take the chance on Elijah Mitchell if everything goes the right way. Raheem's out, maybe Jeff Wilson's out, hypothetically. Let's just say it was him and Trey. RB1, RB2 on the roster. Obviously, they're going to have a little bit more depth in the running back room, but I think it will be solidified that Elijah Mitchell will be the running back moving forward.
Imagine they draft another running back this year.
And that's the thing with the 49ers. They just love to draft running backs. Anyone can be the starting running back week in and week out. Yeah. I mean,
I imagine his
guess the
ADP is going to be higher,
question is,
though, to be honest. I think he goes in the end of the second. I think his ADP is going to be higher than these other guys. Younger guy in a run-heavy offense, but is that something that you would be willing to take a risk on? Second round, late second round, your second player, Elijah Mitchell. Are you going to be hoping that he falls to the third at least?
Yeah, I think, look, you definitely can't take the chance. I think this next year, let me ask you a question. Saquon Barkley or Elijah Mitchell?
Yeah, it's a good question. We're going to be having these conversations all offseason. I think right now I would lean Elijah Mitchell. I mean, we're going to talk about Saquon here in a second. Perfect time to talk about busts of the year. Why don't we start with Saquon Barkley?
Sure.
Drafted as the running back 8, finished as a running back 30. Let's talk about his season. He missed 5 games. And I don't know if you remember this, but in the preseason, it was a big conversation between you and I of where do we draft him, because there is injury concerns and we don't know how long he's going to be out or if he'll get the full workload. He ended up missing 5 games.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, in games when he was fully active, he didn't look like his old self, in my opinion. I don't want to say he lost a step,
right?
But he doesn't look like rookie year Saquon anymore.
No, and look, you need to be giving Saquon rookie year opportunities. You know, Saquon was going crazy with the opportunities in the air and on the ground, and he didn't necessarily get that. Obviously, they brought him in slowly. But as a Giants fan, as someone that is a Saquon Barkley fan, I think you can see a potential comeback if everything goes right with this Giants. New hiring of the GM, new hiring of the head coach. If they just invest in an offensive line, that all they have to do is invest in an offensive line. I don't care who they bring in as weapons. You know, we can have old wide receivers, we can have whatever. If you can invest in an offensive line, Saquon Barkley can produce and give the man some
They've
holes.
Been trying, man. To be fair, you guys have been trying to invest in offensive line. It's not worked out.
It hasn't worked out.
When I look at his season, so many inconsistent games, and he was a player all year. It was like, do I start him or this other guy who has an opportunity because of injury? You know, 8 games this year, Saquon scored under 10 PPR points in 8 games, and in that span, those 8 games, he averaged 5.3 points in those games. He only had 2 games over 20 points. This isn't the Saquon that we're used to seeing. I hate to say it because I love Saquon.
Yeah.
But I think some of the explosiveness is gone. I'll be honest. I think he has lost a little bit of the explosiveness. I'm not saying he's not a great back. I'm not saying he's still not a top 10 back, but some of the explosiveness is not there anymore. And I don't know if it's the team or Saquon, but what do we do next year in drafts? What do we do in Dynasty? Like, how do we approach Saquon going forward?
For me, the only way I can approach it with confidence is what happens to this team. Who's going to be the quarterback? What happens with the offensive line? You know, I think Saquon is still talented. Maybe he did lose a step, but at the end of the season, you kind of saw him getting his bearings. He had like one game that he rushed over 100 yards. You saw it was decent, but it was still bad for Saquon. Yeah. It was still bad for the Giants. It was just still bad. It wasn't the elite
for Saquon
workload that you expect for Saquon Barkley. So, look, if I need to take a chance on Saquon in a redraft perspective.
What round? What's it going to be? End of the second?
End of the second, beginning of the third. I'm still taking a chance on him over Lenny and James Conner. I think it comes down to Elijah Mitchell and Saquon Barkley. I'm going to be going back and forth.
All right, our last bust of the year, and this is 2 years in a row, is Christian McCaffrey. I know he was injured a lot. I mean, missed a ton of games, but still, if you drafted him, he busted for your team. There's no debate over that. He was the first player taken in every draft, finished as the running back 38. Mm-hmm. He averaged 23.5 points per game. He just wasn't on the field. And in the last 2 years, he has missed 23 games in 2 years. 23 games CMC has not been there. In 2020, he missed 13. I know because I drafted him at the 1.01 in 2020 in a money league. In 2021, missed 10 games. Yeah. I know because I drafted him again at the 1.01. Only 2 years I've had CMC, and he's busted for me. Was great when he played, but he destroyed a bunch of teams. So let's talk about it next year. Where do you see CMC going? Is he still a first-round pick? It's probably stupid to say, but is he still a first-round pick? And will the workload be the same?
No, I think he still has to go in the first round. I think it's going to be Jonathan Taylor, and then it can go interchange between anyone. Dalvin, Alvin, CMC, maybe even Derrick Henry in that mix as well. I think he goes top 5, top 6 for sure. It just depends on where you want to take that chance. I know we did a redraft, dynasty startup, and if I'm not mistaken, he went 6th round or 6th pick, 7th pick.
He was in the 2nd round. He wasn't even chosen in the 1st round. But we did a redraft league for next year, and he was taken 6th pick. That was in the redraft one. It's crazy to see, but I mean, I do have questions about his workload. I don't know if this is 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that he can't keep that workload, but wouldn't it make sense from a GM's perspective to maybe lighten the workload a little bit? I mean, 65 to 70% of CMC is still better than 100% of a lot of players, but it'll be an interesting conversation.
Absolutely.
These are our busts and breakouts of the year at the running back position. Comment below if you disagree or you agree.
Yo, what's good? Thanks for watching. We got a lot more videos.
A lot more.
If you want more videos.
Watch it.
You can also subscribe.
Right now.
If you want to.
You need to.
And lastly, don't forget that you can sign up to support the show and get exclusive content by going to patreon.com/fantasylandfam.